Okay, welcome back to my highly intermittent video blog. So I've just been to the Camp for Climate Action 2010 in Edinburgh. I've been asked by quite a few people, oh, what was the climate camp about? How did things go? There's quite a lot of negative press this year, which is, I think, the first time we've really had to deal with that. Generally, we've managed to get our message across, and there's been a few sort of dodgy reports and sort of made up articles, articles produced on factually incorrect information or just purely fabricated. But this time it seems that it's quite different. It's actually on a relatively large scale. There's been a lot of negative press, so I'm going to touch on that a bit as well. So I guess the first thing to say is that it was in the climate camp this year was in Edinburgh, and the reason it was in Edinburgh is because that's where the headquarters of the Royal Bank of Scotland are. And we decided to target Royal Bank of Scotland for two reasons, really. Firstly, they're one of the largest, globally, one of the largest investors in coal, oil, and unconventional oil such as tar sands in Alberta. That's one thing. That's a sort of fact that makes us think this is an organisation which could potentially be a target. But the second thing, I think, a really important point, is that the Royal Bank of Scotland is actually 84% taxpayer owned. It wouldn't exist anymore if it was not bailed out by the British government during the financial crisis. So if we've got a bank which is globally one of the largest investors in polluting extractive industries, particularly tar sands, which I'll get onto in just a second, and these companies and the policies which a bank is following are directly contrary to government policy, then there's a case to say, well, the government should be making sure that its own money, our own tax money, is not being used directly contrary to British interests. So, as I mentioned, one of the biggest things about the Royal Bank of Scotland is its investment in tar sands, which are arguably the single most destructive project on the planet. Basically what they do is, the boreal forests in Canada, beautiful, picturesque Alberta. There was recently this Rethink Alberta campaign trying to get potential tourists to think again and say, do they really want to support Alberta when it's destroying its landscape like this? But whatever you think about that campaign, it is a beautiful place. So these forests, they're cutting all the trees down off the top. Presumably they do make use of that wood. I'd guess, unlike in the Amazon where they just burn the trees down, and then they remove all the life basically off the soil. They remove the soil, take it down quite a depth, like 20-30 feet, I think. This is all called overburden. They push that all to the side, and then they can get to the tar sands, which are a mixture of sand and bitumen. Sand, possibly gravel, and bitumen. This extremely viscous material, which covers vast areas, is what they're after. This is like the desperation of the global oil industry at the moment. The sheer fact that removing all this overburden to get down and picking all this material and then having to physically separate it and then chemically treat it, heat it, crack it, get down to smaller molecular sizes or lighter fractions of crude, which can then be processed in refineries. The fact that going through all this effort even has a payback shows just how desperate we're getting for oil. This whole process covers huge areas of Alberta, and obviously completely devastated. You've removed all the life off the top. You've completely destroyed these what they call overburden, or we call boreal ecosystems. So that's one point. I guess the other main point, which we actually had represented at the camp, is that these lands are not deserted. A lot of these lands which are being used for tar sands extraction are occupied by indigenous people. But these people not only have to live with this destruction, they also have to live with water pollution, which is sort of, I'd say there's two sort of main forms of water pollution. Firstly, there's the vast tailing ponds, which is all the chemical effluent from this highly water-intensive process of extracting usable oil out of the tar sands. So they have vast ponds, which actually one of these tailing ponds is actually behind is actually the largest volume of dammed water in the world. You know, that dam there has more water behind it, toxic water, than the Three Gorges Dam has behind it. So this is like really massive scale stuff. Because it's new, a lot of people, you know, even in the UK, it's only recently that the environmental community has become aware of what's actually going on there. So that's so not only are they living with this, they're living with that water pollution in the tailings ponds, but these tailing ponds are often leach into rivers nearby. So then then they get polluted, and obviously for indigenous peoples, a lot of their food is from the land. Some of their traditional medicines are also plants from the land. So they're in generally in much closer contact with the land, and if the plants and animals living on that land are being poisoned, then the people who rely on those plants and animals stand a higher chance of also being poisoned. And actually, in terms of the talks we were being given by some of the indigenous people who'd come over to the UK to explain their plight, sort of the most affecting thing about their testimony was probably not actually the environmental impact, but the human impact, the very high rate of extremely rare cancers, which aren't extremely rare around the tar sands.
Okay. Well, my name is Jasmine Thomas. I'm a member of the Frog Clan from the Carrier Nation in British Columbia, Canada. I wanted to let the UK taxpayers know where their money is going and what they are financing, because it is financing the destruction of our people. Health impacts that the community have been exposed to have been so great and really have impacted my own family. My father has been diagnosed with a lung cancer, and just before I made this journey here to Scotland, he was with my grandfather, his father, who recently had a massive stroke because the cancer spread into his brain. And these are very common incidents in many of our homes in our communities.
So this is why we were in Edinburgh. So to highlight what the Royal Bank of Scotland is doing, and the fact that this is all taxpayer funded. So the climate camp generally has a mixture. It has a workshop, so which is like a series of lectures, and also like a networking element in that part. So there's workshops on various campaigns, and then there's also workshops on various technologies or ideas or concepts which people want to see explored. Then there's a direct action element to it, which is well, the exact definition of direct action varies, but in the context of a climate camp, it generally means disruptive but non-violent. So it would mean like blockading the Royal Bank of Scotland headquarters or prominent targets of RBS within Edinburgh, such as like the main branches, that kind of thing.